Good morning. There it is. Clear, crystal clear. Beautiful. A new day for you. And the good news. Crystal clear. And the good news. And these little birds that are always doing their dance and their theatrics. Their whole strategy is to invite you to chase them so that they drag you away from where their nest is. Not sure if they have nests already. I doubt it, but I'm not sure. But they're at least they're practicing for when they have a nest. It's amazing, how this is so clear, so clean. And the beach seems to have been cleaned up quite a bit. Thanks be to God. The Sea of Galilee is super calm this morning. They cut the grass here so I can walk through here now. Grass is very, very wet this morning back there. We've walked through it, I think, yesterday or the day before. It was soaking wet and there was no rain. Sorry about that, people. Soaking wet. So it's that condensation probably, change of temperature at night time. I think I learned the explanation for that when I was in high school. That's a long time ago. So we're going to go for a nice brisk walk down here, get the whole circulation going, warm up a little. It's very, very clear, the atmosphere. Actually, I just saw Mount Hermon back there. Not 100% clear like you could say sometimes, but it might get clearer when the sun is rising now and shining on it. But the sun was very quickly making its track on the water. And you remember when there was some haze last week, it took a while to get that path of light. I love that path of light on the water. Beautiful reflections. Look how green and wet this is. Look how wet it is. You can see how wet it is. It's so wet. You can see my shoes here. How wet they get. Sorry about the rush movement there. All these flowers, weeds. When we were on the farm as kids, we had no time for weeds. The weeds had to be banished because the weeds were competing for good grass. or the crops, the other tillage crops. So I'm grateful for all the feedback, and a wonderful person from England wrote an email. I just saw it briefly. Normally don't see many things before I go out in the morning, but she said to me that I left people hanging on Friday, and we were talking about all the troubles, of the fall, and then I started saying there's good news, there's great news, and then because I saw the deer, you remember we saw the 3 deer on Friday? They were actually right up there, more or less behind this bush, but the angle isn't good now to see the grass. And they were running away from us beyond the cows. And so I said, we have good news. We were talking about the fall, Genesis 3. And we have good news. And then I said, oh, look at the deer, look at the deer. And I never got back to the good news. So I will admit publicly that I have a tendency to get distracted and to get off subject because of what's happening around me on these morning strolls and chats, which probably happens in usual chats and strolls anyway. When people are out strolling and something happens, they say, what are we talking about? So I never got back to that. And I'm very grateful for that comment, because today is all about the same good news. And it's the good news of salvation, because I love the example of the parents and children, especially parents and little children, small children. They do the wrong things, it's for all different kinds of reasons, Basically they don't know, there's not bad intent, maybe there can be a moment of rebellion and assertion and so on. But all the parents want to do is the child gets educated, and that the child grows up and has healthy behavior and healthy relationships and looks after themselves properly, blossoms, matures, becomes a wonderful human being. So that's just a reflection on the water of what God is, God's love for us, His will for us to grow, to develop, to mature, for all of humanity, and for each one of us, particularly personally, for you in particular, for each one of us, And the good news then, obviously, the blessing we experience as Christians is to recognize that Jesus is this good news. He's the dawn. He's the one who is, today he's touching the leper. Who touched lepers? Oh my gosh. And I think even a bigger miracle than just touching the leper and curing them, which is huge, is that so many of Jesus' followers went out to serve. Like, you can hardly think of the history of that type of compassionate love. You have to think of Damien, the Belgian guy. And he asked to go to a leper colony off Hawaii, Molokai. And it's interesting that in the US Capitol, there are 2 people from every state, outstanding people representing them. And Damien is one of the ones for Hawaii. It left such an impact on the people that he would go to live with the lepers. There were preachers who would come in, and they would come on the boats, but they would never leave the boats because they wouldn't be allowed back in the mainland. And they'd preach from the boats, tell the people you have to trust in God. Oh, she finally came. I was calling her and there was no sign of her. I wonder what she was up to. She's kind of making up to me now. So Damien went to Molokai, and he went and everybody knew he wasn't coming back. And there's a famous story, you remember, how he's older and he pours boiling water on his foot accidentally out of the big jug, you know. It's back in the 1800s, and you didn't have piped in water, and the big jug and poured in the water on his feet to warm his feet, but he didn't feel the heat, and he knew because of that, that was one of the first signs that you had leprosy, that your nervous system was breaking down. So he is such an example, such an incredible example. And so this is the beautiful gift that Jesus brings, is the transformation of our hearts to be hearts of compassion. Then there's actually, that little lady is so upset that we're here. Or she's trying to practice her skills to distract us. So, look at all these lovely flowers here. Lovely weeds. Wildflowers. Let's do it that way, wildflowers. We still have a few of these ones left. Most of them are dying off, as you can see. Their bloom is fading. You can see here these blooms are gone, but they have done their job and the seed's forming. Oh, look at this one. This is a new one. I hadn't seen this one before. Look at this series, the whole set of them, each of the separate flowers, and they're all together like one big flower. There's a whole lot of those up between the primacy of Peter and Capernaum. There are whole shrubs of them, thousands of these flowers together. So we have Jesus' willingness to touch the leper, and you put that in contrast with what we have in the Leviticus reading. You know, you have the link there for the Sunday readings, and the Sunday readings we have an extra reading. This one is from Corinthians. But in the choice of the readings, the primary criterion is that the first reading and the gospel match up. And this year in year B we're reading Mark, as we already commented a few times. And so we're still in chapter 1 in Mark, because the daily readings obviously cover a lot more ground, 6 days a week, and the Sunday readings have 1 day a week. So we're still in chapter 1 of Mark's Gospel, which we will be following most of the year in the normal time. Interesting how the water is making so much noise right now here. And so the Leviticus reading is all about leprosy, about the rules for leprosy, about Aaron or his sons, the priests, the Levites. They've got to check those who are potentially leprous. And of course Aaron and the priests are in charge of the worship, and the people are excluded from the community because of this infection. They're ritually impure and they cannot be at worship. And what Jesus does with touching us is we are healed for worship, for divine worship, for participating with the community in this worship. And so then the leprosy becomes a metaphor for sin, because it so distorts us, it so damages us, it's destructive of us. And then Jesus' presence is healing of us, is renewing and bringing us back into God's company. And we covered those last few days of last week. Chapter 3 in Genesis with the fall, the breakdown of our relationship with God. And so the forgiveness of sin, this is the great news. We can have terrible bad history. It's bad enough to have health breakdowns and cancers and all of these things, but to have a spiritual breakdown, to be spiritually broken, to be in despair, in darkness, alienated, and then to be forgiven, to be reintegrated into the togetherness of the community, renewed, a new person, together with God, together with all of our brothers and sisters. So Jesus was so pure, his purity transformed the impurity, just like that wonderful insight on the understanding of Jesus' baptism. You know, he didn't need to be baptized, but he was baptized, and his entry into the Jordan rivers purified them to become laden with grace, so to say, for, oh, look at that bird there in the sunlight, for our purification. Now, something similar happens in the contrast and the gospel. There's a switcheroo, a turnaround. So the leper was excluded. He had to cry out from a distance, "I'm a leper, don't touch me. This is contagious disease." You know, we understand that today with our pandemic regulations. And then Jesus asked him not to say anything. That's a whole other topic. It's called the messianic secret. It's the theological term for it in Mark's gospel, where Jesus doesn't want to reveal his identity immediately because it would be falsely understood. It's going to take quite some time for the disciples. Now we're at the end of our tether here. Sorry people, my microphone fell off here. I need to fix it. So you can see we came to the end. Just bear with me a second here. You can check your shoelaces if they're still tied after all the walking you're doing. Good, the microphone is fixed there now, I think. Oops, sorry about that. I don't have my tripod open because I'm walking, and then I try to do a little favor for my nose, but I lost the balance, so I apologize. And now we're standing at a bit of an angle. There we go. Now we're back in shape there. We're enjoying this beauty of sunrise at the Sea of Galilee. Let me go up another bit and I'll stop there for a moment so you can have a nice view of the sunrise, and we can look at the text again a little more closely. Oh, by the way, yesterday, was it yesterday? Yeah, I think yesterday. We were up here, just under these cliffs. We were almost at the end there. There's an electric pole up there. Or maybe even a little bit further over. And we started there on our way back. And tomorrow we're starting our pilgrimage. Introductory talks tomorrow and Tuesday. And then we're having the real beginning of the pilgrimage on Ash Wednesday, which is this Wednesday. So actually, this is our last Sunday normal readings, because once we go into Lent, then we will have special series of readings for Lent. And obviously the first one is always the Temptations in the Desert, so that'll be next Sunday. Let's stop here for a moment. There's something with the tripod here, so I can take it level. That's better. I turn to you, Lord, in time of trouble, and you will fill me with the joy of salvation. That's our psalm, Psalm 32. Blessed is he whose fault is taken away, whose sin is covered. Blessed the man to whom the Lord imputes not guilt, in whose spirit there is no guile. And Jesus is the one who saves us there. Jesus is the one who brings us this gift of salvation. Look at that. I turn to you in times of refuge. I turn to you, Lord, in time of trouble. Just imagine the storm on the sea. And you fill me with the joy of salvation. The calm, the rest, the battle is done. The joy of salvation. Then I acknowledged my sin to you, my guilt I covered not. I said, I confessed my faults to the Lord, and you took away the guilt of my sin. Be glad in the Lord and rejoice, you just. Exult all you upright of heart. I turn to you, Lord, in time of trouble, and you fill me with the joy of salvation. Now, the interesting thing that when the leper is cured, he's reintegrated, even though Jesus says to him, don't tell everybody, because Jesus wanted to have time for the people to understand that his being a savior was going to pass through Calvary. It wasn't going to be a straight door into calm from our trouble. It was going to be a hard, laborious path of great pain and suffering and rejection to win us reintegration. And this already is in this story in a hidden way, not so hidden, because the leper is reintegrated, but because he keeps talking about Jesus, Jesus has to go to the deserted places. Isn't that interesting? Jesus has to go to the deserted places. He has to withdraw. And we'll see that next Sunday in the Temptations in the desert. But it's already here. You know, when the gospel is written, it connects an awful lot of dots because it's written after all of this. And it's written with the light of the Holy Spirit after all this has happened. Now, if you have a good sharp eye and you're looking there, you see the Mount of Beatitudes with the plastics, and then behind that is Mount Herman. I can see it with my eyes, but just so barely, because there's too much haze up there already. But I can see it. Maybe if some of you are looking at it on a big screen, you could also see it. Oh, there now is a little bit more. I stretched it a little bit more. Here. Okay, you can make it out, but it's not so clear. So Jesus is excluded from the society in order to include others. And that's what Damien did, Damien the leper. You can Google him. I didn't think to put in a link for him this morning, but it's really amazing. It's wonderful to be included. I had a nice experience of that on Friday when Chris Mitchell from CBN, Christian Broadcasting Network, on Jerusalem Dateline, and he invited Kathleen Nichols and myself on his program to be included. Who can you include today? Who can you bring in? Who is rejected? Maybe somebody did something bad in the family. Maybe they were in jail. Maybe they did something that's very looked down upon and people aren't anxious to talk to that person. Maybe it's a neighbor. Who's excluded today? And the reading from St. Paul is also very beautiful in that regard. It's, I make myself all things, you know. I want to not be an obstacle to people to know Jesus. I'm ready to go out a little bit towards them. I'm ready to adapt and to give them a joy. And that way to build a bridge. Building bridges. How many bridges that truck is going to cross over and it's travel on the road. We don't even notice the bridges. We drive along, we don't even think there are bridges, and all the effort that was made for the bridges. To be a bridge, oops, so we got just a crane right there. Or is it a crane? No, it's not. It's a different bird. That's a bird of prey. Wow, we're getting a nice show here today. If I can zero in a little more. The light from above coming right down to us here. Look at that. Wow. Not sure how these technical effects work, but they're nice. People, I think we'll say goodbye. It was wonderful being with you this morning. And there we have a very nice conclusion. You're not probably going to know a leper and touch a leper today, but maybe there's a social leper. Maybe there's somebody that isn't considered a beautiful flower and the type of one that gets all the likes in the social media. And you build a little bridge there. And that'd be a beautiful way to celebrate this Sunday. Especially if you're locked in and you can't go out. You know, that phone call, that little message you send, that little like you give to something they posted, because they normally don't get too many likes, little comment you write. That would make a wonderful Sunday, wouldn't it? God bless you. See you later, alligators.